I would like to ask us to use our imagination for just a minute. Let's imagine that we're standing on a square plot of land surrounded by 4 dirty, dusty roads. On one corner of that lot, there is a newly constructed log building which is serving as the courthouse and post office for a newly formed community. On the opposite corner is an enormous pecan tree, so large in the landscape that for years before the log courthouse was built, this was where business and other kinds of transactions took place. In the scene we're viewing, it's evening, and a tree stump has been placed near the pecan tree and covered with a bearskin. An oil lantern sits on the stump, which is serving tonight as a pulpit. Arranged in rows in front of the stump are consecutive split logs, and there are dozens of people seated on those logs, giving their attention to the preacher standing behind that bearskin-covered stump. Can you see it? If you can, then you're looking in on what is said by witnesses to be the first known public worship service in the city of Sherman. Brush arbor sessions like that will happen from time to time, often taking place there on the Sherman Town Square, which at that time had 3 or 4 stores on the Travis Street side, a couple of log cabins on one corner, including that courthouse, and a row of small residential homes along the west side on Crockett Street. In 1853, a small wooden building was erected on the corner of Travis and Pecan that served as a schoolhouse during the week, and on the weekends was used by a Union church, which was made up of Sherman residents of Methodist, Baptist, and Christian church backgrounds. And a small Baptist church was organized in 1856, but the outbreak of the Civil War brought an end to that effort. After that conflict was resolved, the period of our national history known as the Reconstruction began. And the 500 plus residents of our city at that time were joined by 100 Union troops who were assigned to keep peace in the area. Times were difficult, and the hardships that the city was experiencing distracted from any continuing attempts to organize churches. But that all changed with the arrival of this man in the summer of 1869. This gentleman's name was Dr. R.C. Buckner, and he had been serving as a pastor in Paris, Texas, Mike, for the preceding 10 years. And in 1868, the newly formed Baptist General Association of Texas had appointed Reverend Buckner as general agent for their mission board and given him the task of leading out in the establishment of new churches throughout the state. Dr. Buckner was a remarkable man with an enormous heart, both for missions and for benevolence. Some years later, he would found the children's home in Dallas that still bears his name, and our own Mary Jackson grew up in that place. The ministry he began has branched in many directions, including the Shoes for Orphan Souls project that we participated in here for many years. His motto was, see a need, meet a need. And the Buckner Benevolence Ministry still uses that motto today. And when Dr. Buckner came to Sherman in 1869, he saw a need. This photo was taken just a few months before he arrived and shows the east side of the square across Travis Street. This is the block where Kelly Square sits now. And this picture, I think, emphasizes the frontier nature of our community at the time our church was formed. A city was being built here, but it had a long way to go. Dr. Buckner had a pastor friend in the area by the name of T.B. McComb. Reverend McComb had pastored a church west of here for about 11 years, but had recently resigned from that post. So Dr. Buckner asked Reverend McComb to assist him in preaching a series of revival services in Sherman with the goal of creating interest in establishing a permanent congregation. The two preachers secured the use of the Oddfellows Hall, believe it or not, there was such a place, that was then located on North Walnut Street and shared preaching duties on a series of services. And crowds soon overflowed the capacity of that building. So the Methodist Church, which had just built a building, offered the use of their building for the continued meetings. And at that time, the Methodist Church was located in the parking lot of the police station, which is now just across the street. And it was during those meetings that the First Baptist Church was officially organized, and Reverend McComb became our first pastor. We continued to share space with the Methodists until 1874, when we were able to raise the funds to construct our own building at the corner of Pecan and Crockett Streets. This very bad photograph is the only known photo of that wooden structure, but on your tables at lunch, you'll find a document that includes a line drawing that makes it a little easier to visualize. The railroad arrived in Sherman in 1872, and that event was a catalyst for rapid growth, both for our city and for our church. In just 1 year, the population of Sherman grew to more than 6,000 people. 1 year. Sherman became an important center for commerce, and the establishment of several colleges and specialty schools within the city brought cultural changes as well. And would you be surprised to learn, as I was, that by the year 1880, Grayson County had the largest population of any county in the state of Texas, larger than Houston or Dallas? The church continued to grow as well, and in 1895, the wooden building was replaced by a beautiful new brick structure, which is also pictured on the front of your worship bulletins. I'd love to have seen this building, wouldn't you? Unfortunately, it was plagued by construction problems from the very start, probably due to unstable soil and inadequate foundation work. And repairs were started before they even completed construction. And in just a few years, the bell tower had to be removed for safety reasons. And shortly after that, the entire building became so unstable that it had to be abandoned. So this current property was purchased in 1911. And construction began here in 1914. The couple pictured here are shown leaving their home on Cherry Street on the way to church from about that same period. I don't know about you, but they make me feel a little underdressed this morning. By the following year, the shell of the new building had been completed, and services were held in the basement beginning on the first Sunday of March in 1915. I'm going to insert a personal aside here. Like many of you, I have fond memories of a lady named Fanny Bess Cunningham. She was sort of the unofficial conscience and historian of our church for many years. And she attended here from her birth in the 1890s until her death in the 1980s. She had so many stories, and she remembered so much of our history from her own experience. She once described to me, sitting right over there, she once described to me coming to worship and having to walk on elevated boards down in the basement to keep her feet dry from the flooding that occurred during the ongoing construction. I've wished so many times we had just put a microphone in front of her and let her record some of those wonderful stories. The outbreak of World War I caused a redirection of priorities for the church and for the nation. Sanctuary construction was halted from 1915 to 1920 as the nation supported the war effort. This memorial, you may not even know, is downstairs and commemorates our church members who served in that conflict. Our pastor during this period was Dr. Fred Brown, and the church granted him a leave of absence in 1918 to serve as chaplain to our soldiers who were fighting in Europe. That same year, a worldwide epidemic of influenza paralyzed the nation. Our church closed its doors for a month to try to prevent the spread of the disease that would eventually take the lives of 548,000 Americans. Following the war, construction was finally completed, and the sanctuary we are sitting in this morning was used for worship for the very first time on October 24th, 1920. Doesn't look quite like that anymore, but that's the way it looked then. We remodeled a time or two since. During our history, we have sought to extend the work of our church by the establishment of mission points and mission churches, both here in Sherman and around the world. East Sherman Baptist Church, Crutchfield Heights Baptist Church, Forest Avenue Baptist Church, North Park Baptist Church, and Fairview Baptist Church all began as missions of our congregation. And at various times through the years, we've sponsored a Korean mission, a deaf community church, an American Indian mission, a Hispanic congregation, and a jail ministry. And that mission spirit continues with the ministries currently being provided over at First Life West. We've been a presence in mission work in Mexico, India, and Peru, among others, and have members who have and who are now serving as missionaries around the globe. Our church has been blessed by the ministry of 19 different pastors over the past 150 years, each of them making their own unique contribution to our lives and to this church's history. We have 14 of them pictured here. A number of them serve Baptist life beyond our congregation in ways that are worthy of mentioning. Dr. Brown, our pastor during the construction of this building, would eventually be chosen to serve as president of the Southern Baptist Convention and as chairman of the SBC Executive Committee. Dr. Lawson serves on that same committee right now and has made many treks to Nashville in recent years to try to help keep our convention focused on the things of God. Let me also mention here that if you've been reading Dr. Jack Noble's excellent articles in our church newsletter, you already know many fascinating things about our past, including the information I just shared about Dr. Brown. Jack, that's been excellent work, and we thank you.
Amen.
Dr. Thomas L. Holcomb immediately followed Dr. Brown as pastor, and he too would serve the Southern Baptist Convention in a number of ways. Dr. Holcomb served as pastor here from 1921 to 1928, leaving here to become the executive secretary of the Baptist General Convention of Texas. In 1935, he was named executive secretary of the Southern Baptist Sunday School Board in Nashville, which is just a highfalutin way of saying he became our boss Baptist. And during his tenure in Nashville, he established the Baptist bookstore system, among other accomplishments. The sanctuary at the Glorieta Retreat Center in New Mexico and the library of the American Baptist University in Nashville, Tennessee, both are named after him. Another wonderful story I learned from Miss Fanny Best concerns Dr. Holcomb's early ministry here. And by the way, I've confirmed this story from several sources, so I'm confident of the facts. When Dr. Holcomb arrived as pastor, the church had incurred considerable debt for the construction of this building, and a large balance of that debt remained unpaid. Convinced that the indebtedness would restrict the church's ability to minister moving forward, he delivered a very specific challenge to the church. On December 26th, the day after Christmas, 1922, he delivered a message that reinforced God's ability to meet the needs of his people. And then at the end of the service, told the congregation he was going to begin to pray, and that he would pray without ceasing until that debt was paid. He meant that quite literally, and will proceed to lie down on this platform in prayer. He was still there when God's people responded and brought offerings to retire that debt in only 35 minutes. Now, the amount of that debt won't sound like all that much to us today. It was $35,225. But I Googled an inflation calculator. Remember, this was 1922. And in today's dollars, this comes to $538,353. That's the equivalent of all of us coming up here and lying $500,000 on the altar before we break for the next session. Amen. I have no doubt that the building committee would be thrilled if we want to line up and try that. Dr. Tom Brandon, was our longest tenured pastor. He served here for 27 years. Ann and I had the privilege to serve alongside him for 10 of those years. He was an amazing man of deep faith and principle. Larry and Linda Rice served here at that same time as well. And I hope it's okay if I mention that I happen to have the privilege of being the longest tenured minister in the history of the church, with 35 years of service. Dr. Brandon was followed by Dr. Stan Fournay. After his time here, Dr. Fournay entered into a distinguished career as a military chaplain and would serve as pastor at the presidential retreat in Camp David during George W. Bush's presidency, and as White House chaplain for President Obama. And of course, today, we're appropriately honoring Dr. Mike Lawson for his 20 years of service, both to us and to our convention. We're going to be saying more about that in our next hour, but it deserves a mention here, too. It's a privilege to honor you today, sir. 150 years ago, a group of men and women with a hunger for the things of God chose to join their hearts together into a community of faith. Since that time, thousands of men and women have joined that band of believers in a continuum of worship and service that has led us right to this day and this marvelous house of God. May the Lord Jesus continue to use us to do his kingdom work until he comes again.